We're going to talk to Dr. Wayne Iverson. He's talked a lot about Obamacare. Obamacare is one of those things that, when they passed it, what was it Pelosi said? She said we have to pass it in order to find out what's in it. And that should have scared you half to death. And this is your health care that they're talking about. And there's a lot of warnings that it's going to get much more expensive for health care. And I noticed that this year as well. That it's going to get much more expensive because of Obamacare. Well, an amicus brief has been filed with the Supreme Court by AAPS, which is a conservative national physician organization, regarding the Obamacare case. And Dr. Iverson is a member of the board of directors for AAPS. So we're going to talk to him about this lawsuit and who else has teamed up with him to get this done. So that's on the way here on AM 600 KOGO, San Diego's news and talk station. We had talked to Ilya Shapiro, who is a senior fellow in constitutional studies at Cato and also editor-in-chief of the Cato Supreme Court Review. And I believe they've also filed an amicus brief. He himself has filed an amicus brief on Obamacare, saying that it is absolutely, positively illegal. He mentions in a couple of articles about the Congressional Budget Office, and they had said nearly 20 years ago, the government has never required people to buy any good or service as a condition of lawful residence in the United States. And that was the CBO, the budgetary treatment of an individual mandate to buy health insurance. That was back in 1994. Wow. Nor has Congress ever before imposed on every person a civil penalty for declining to buy a product. Even in the New Deal case of Wickard v. Filburn, the federal government claimed merely the power to regulate what farmers grew, not to mandate that people become farmers or buy farm products. And Ilya goes on in several things in Cato to talk about these things and say that, this is without a doubt unconstitutional. Well, we've talked to Dr. Wayne Iverson, who is a member of the board of directors for AAPS, which is a conservative national physician organization, talking about this upcoming Obamacare case. And Dr. Iverson, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, it's always a pleasure because this Obamacare, I think, has a lot of people scared. I think we're all looking at the possibility that insurance is going to become very, very expensive, and I don't think it's going to do what it was supposed to do, which is make sure everybody has health care.
You've got it exactly right, and I think that some of the members of Congress that voted for this bill are at this point scared too. So the direction it's going to the Supreme Court, I think, is going to give everyone a great deal of relief because finally a decision will be made. And if you take a look at the way this health care reform law was constructed, that's ACA, it's the Affordable Care Act,
right,
is the name of the law. If you take a look at the way it's constructed, it's really constructed very poorly, as mentioned by the Cato Institute. The measures that they mentioned at that point in time apply to what currently we're looking at right now.
Now, what is the AAPS's biggest problems? What are the AAPS's biggest problems with this Obamacare?
Well, first of all, let me just mention that with this filing of the amicus brief on Tuesday, October 21st, this is the first chance that doctors have been able to tell the Supreme Court that Obamacare harms patients and is unconstitutional in its entirety. Now, people have been saying this in public, but this is doctors saying this right to the Supreme Court, and I think that carries a whole lot of weight.
Now, what exactly did you, or if you don't mind, giving us just a thumb sketch of what it is that you guys said in your amicus brief?
Sure. What it is the 11th Circuit Court took a look at the ruling from the Florida ruling and said that, agreed that the individual mandate was unconstitutional. That was all the things that you had mentioned before you went on break about the government forcing people to buy insurance.
Right.
And you were absolutely correct. That is unconstitutional, and the 11th Circuit upheld that and said that portion of the bill was unconstitutional. However, the 11th Circuit incorrectly severed that individual mandate from the rest of the bill, and what the 11th Circuit should have done is they just should have thrown out the whole Affordable Care Act. The whole ACA bill should have been declared unconstitutional, and the reason for that is judges are not allowed to have a line item veto. And the thing is this is not the kind of thing where it's very complicated to see that there was a bad ruling on severing that one section, and so the Supreme Court will pretty easily be able to see that ruling was done incorrectly and that the whole bill should be thrown out as unconstitutional.
And when they take a look at this, and that's going to come up, earlier next year?
Well, actually, it's going to move a little bit faster than that. I just checked with our attorney. We thought that this is going to be picked up maybe as early as November, and that the filings will be made after that point in time, and then very early on in the year there'll be some additional legal work, and then it could be as early as March or April there may be some oral arguments. So this actually may move along a lot faster than people had previously anticipated.
Well, I know that everybody expected the Obama administration to fight the 11th Circuit's ruling on this, and they decided not to. And I guess, the idea is that just, get it done. And he's thinking that if it gets, torn down, I'm assuming that they can then say in the middle of an election year, hey, they're trying to kill poor people.
You know what kind of dialogue has been coming out of the administration, and so those kinds of things I wouldn't put past them. However, as a practical matter, when the 11th Circuit made its ruling, a business group, NFIB, did petition the Supreme Court to hear this, and then along with that, so did the government. And so we have a couple of petitioners that are very interested in having the Supreme Court make a ruling, and as you say, what we see is that the government wants to have a ruling on this too. The politics aside, this is bad healthcare legislation, and actually, LaDonna, we talked about this when we were talking about the movie Sick and Sicker.
Right.
This is actually bad legislation. This didn't come together in a nice, wholesome manner, and in fact, when it came down to signing the actual bill, President Obama signed one health reform bill on one day, and they didn't do a proper reconciliation. And then what they did is they came up with another bill that President Obama signed, and the reconciliation was not done properly either. In fact, that was unconstitutional. It violates what's called the pre-settlement clause. And we had initially identified this early on in our own lawsuit that we filed in Washington, D.C., and it's been trickling through, so our lawsuit hasn't come to the same state where the 11th Circuit has. But we identified other things in the bill that's unconstitutional, and so now with this amicus brief, we've put these into our friend of the court filing, and so the Supreme Court will be able to see these other things that are unconstitutional as well.
Well, for those of us who do not believe that the federal government has the power to tell us to buy anything, we are hoping that the Supreme Court review happens fast and that it is in a good way tears this thing apart, because it's just absolutely not constitutional. And I'm not finding very many constitutional scholars out there who actually say that it is.
You're correct, and the thing is, this was badly crafted legislation to begin with, but on the other hand, the provisions that are in it are also poorly crafted, and I'll give you an example. There's a committee that spawned out of this, and what this committee is charged with doing is they're charged with pulling $500 billion out of Medicare benefits over the next 10 years to support this new health care reform legislation. Well, if this health care reform legislation is unconstitutional, there shouldn't be a committee pulling out $500 billion of Medicare benefit. Medicare beneficiaries, the people who receive this, need to have this, and with this unconstitutional legislation providing a group that's going to go in now and then pull off money that's supposed to go to our seniors, that's just wrong.
Well, Dr. Iverson, you know what? I'm up against the clock here. I've got to go, but we will talk to you again as this thing wends its way through the court and as it gets closer to the time when we're going to see some oral arguments, okay?
I would be delighted. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Wayne Iverson here on AM 600 KOGO, San Diego's News and Talk Station.